Hey, it's Stacey Luces. Welcome to Beyond the Quo. I know many of you, like me, were probably Game of Thrones fans. And one of the things that we always heard in the Game of Thrones was winter is coming. And they preached that for years before quote unquote winter actually came. What I want to talk about today for specifically leaders, but just people in general, is this concept that, okay, I'm in Florida, winter isn't coming, but for all of us, disruption definitely is coming. And it's already here for many of us. And it may not be in the ways that we think about a disruption, but definitely if you are at work, maybe it's the way that your team shows up on Zoom and their level of engagement. Maybe it's in how your clients decide to trust you based on your marketing and based on your actions versus your, what you portray on social media. Maybe it's in the way your Gen X or younger generations in your workplace are using AI and technology when there are some people on your leadership team that maybe want to form a task force to figure out how to work things. I think that for a lot of us, we understand that the leaders that are going to thrive in the next decade aren't necessarily the ones with the biggest budget. Not that that doesn't help. Or the fanciest dashboard. Nod to my team when we used to do data analytics at the Department of Homeland Security, or even the longest resumes, right? I think that those that are going to thrive in the next decade through disruptions, which aren't looking like they're going to stop, are going to be the ones that know how to lead inside of that disruption. And how you do that is going to be with having laser focused clarity, having courage, right? We talk a lot about three things on this podcast. We talk about redefining success on your own terms. We talk about living authentically and leading courageously. And a part of leading inside this disruption that is bound to happen, much like winter will always be coming, is clarity, courage, and conviction. And that's what today's episode about. So if you are a leader, a VP, a founder, a C-suite executive, a disruptor, right, which hopefully is all of you in some way, shape, or form, this episode is for you. So again, I'm Stacey Luces. I am the founder and CEO of Evolution Executive Coaching and the Living Beyond movement. And for over 25 years, I've coached and advised executives across Fortune 100 companies, federal government agencies, and entrepreneurial ventures. My expertise specifically is in leading transformation, strategy, and helping people redefine success on their own terms. If you've been with me before, or if this is your first time, just know that I don't like to just talk about theory. I myself have lived through burnout. You can hear on past episodes I've described my experience where I had emergency surgery and flatlined on the operating table, and I had to build from the inside out. I had all the surface level things, but building from the inside out took a level of authenticity and raw grit that I didn't know that I have. And some days I still freaking question myself. But that experience taught me, and I use it now to channel into the clients that I have and the circles that I have and the communities and the nonprofits I volunteer for, that there is a difference between performing leadership and actually leading with not only purpose, but really personal power, right? So today I want to walk you through 4 disruptions that I'm not only hearing in all of the events that I'm going to, but the podcasts that I'm listening to, the things that, the workshops that I'm being asked to do around 4 things that we can't ignore. But more importantly, I want to give you some strategies into how to turn each one into a growth opportunity. And so these are the 4 that I want to touch on today. Number 1 is AI and technology acceleration. I mean, that has just dominated not only our professional lives, but I think our personal lives so much in the past year, but even for some of us longer than that. The second one is generational shifts in the workplace. And I always talk about the intergenerational divide, but I also love to talk about the intergenerational bridges. And I did a workshop last week with an organization here. It was during their quarterly senior executive leadership event, and it was 1 hour where we talked about multi-generational leadership strategies. And I cannot tell you, even up until this morning, I got an email just thanking me for that workshop, because in 60 minutes, they understood that it wasn't just this cool thing where, oh, we have 4 generations in the workplace. It was, oh my gosh, we think differently. Our frame of reference is different. We show up differently. We speak differently. We negotiate differently. We expect rewards and recognition differently. And combined, all of these can lead to a disengaged workforce, which has an impact on performance, which for a lot of us, ROI kind of is the name of the game. There is significant impact to our ROI if we are not careful about these things. The third disruption I want to talk about is executive burnout and mental health. And I'm deliberately coupling those two because some of us think that mental health happens to other people and mental wellness strategies are for other people. And I really want to challenge you that there is only so much you can go until you hit a wall. And that wall, for some of us, actually is a mountain that drops on your head, and then you don't actually know which way is up. And then the fourth sticky, disruptive topic I want to talk about is inclusion and culture in a polarized world, right? And so for each of these, I want to share a little story, either based on my personal experience or what I'm seeing clients dealing with or what I'm working with organizations around. I want to share kind of a leadership trap that you could find yourself in for the disruption. I want to talk about a reframe. And if you know me, you know I tell this story a whole lot. A reframe, a change in perspective, changes the quality of your life. It can change the quality of the way that you show up. It can change the quality of the services and products that you provide to, serve the vision of what it is you do. And I also want to give you 2 or 3 strategies that you can implement today, or at the least this week. Gosh, can you believe it's like almost the end of August? Anyway, and I also want to leave you, before we wrap up, with a challenge to try with either your team or quite honestly, I like to engage some of my friends and networking groups and the people I hang out with. I like to engage them in some of these strategies because even last night I had dinner with an amazing friend. She's the founder of the Hispanic Entrepreneurs Initiative, and we grabbed dinner at a Thai restaurant, a little dive close to where we both live. And just talking to her about not only some of the challenges that she's dealing with in her community and the work that she's doing with small business owners, but sharing ideas. And I shared with her some of what I'm going to share with you. And I could see her sort of spinning some of these scenarios in her head. And so my hope for you is that, not all of this is going to land for all of you, but I hope some of it lands for some of you. And in that's, the key goal of anybody doing work like this, whether it's podcasting or authors or creatives, putting themselves out there. Some of us, grossed out and sweaty and still doing it, is that we help somebody navigate some of the shit show a little bit better. So let's get right into it. So like I said, the big disruption, numero uno right now, is AI and technology acceleration. So a client recently told me she works in the government, and she said, AI is moving faster than our policy. Yeah, of course it is, right? And I think it's my perspective that policies describe the past, like here's what happened, here's what we did, here's what works. So let's leverage best practices, socialize it with a few stakeholders, and draft something that we think, generally speaking, meets you where you are for the thing that you're doing, right? So policies kind of describe the past, but strategy interprets the future. Strategy is, you extrapolate from any given amounts of scenarios, data, past experiences, and you try to predict courses of action for things that you think are going to happen. And it may or may not happen, right? Smart strategists get it as close to reality as maybe we hope, but still there is some guesswork in it, right? And so when she said this, that AI is moving faster in our policies, one of the consequences about that or around that was that her organization, her team, felt really paralyzed by the endless debates about which AI tool to use and when to use it. And so in talking to her and doing some of our strategy work, we decided to flip the script. And instead of saying which tool, we asked what decisions could be human, which should be assisted, and which should be automated. And that one question, I saw that aha moment happen for her, but quite honestly, it happened for me also. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a founder who is looking to launch things in the near future with other humans, we're all going to come at this differently. And I want to say that working through that anxiety and those fears that, again, maybe even generationally we have around technology and what that means is so imperative, right? And so the trap that we can run into around quote unquote AI and technology, and oh my God, my fears and aversion to it, is treating AI as either a threat to leadership or an identity or shiny object to chase. Like really, that is the trap that I see a lot of people falling into. It's either feast or famine, right? And a reframe could be, AI is an opportunity. It's a lever. And so your value as a leader is, well, hopefully, is your decision to be, it is your position to be a decision maker and to build trust. And not only that, but to execute on the vision and more importantly, provide guardrails around how you're going to use it, given the work that you do, right? Whether it's healthcare or real estate or marketing, right? Any of these industries that you're serving, define what your guardrails are for technology and AI. So 3 leader moves you can make. And like I said, a lot of this can be easily implemented. My goal here is not to have you hire someone and pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to execute something, right? One, I think a quick, easy way, and this is one of what we discussed with that company I just talked about, is a decision audit map. What the heck is that? Well, for a lot of us, we like to think that we are enormously, consistently innovative. We're not. Humans by nature are creatures of habit. We are creatures that have the same pattern. I drive the same way to get to this podcast studio every day. And if that way is blocked and there's a detour, I get a little bit like, oh shit, am I going to be there on time? What am I expecting? So by nature, we are designed to want to do things in a pattern. And so I would offer rather that for your company, your life, the way that you do things, what are your top 10 recurring decisions? And the next step would be, now that you understand what your top 10 are, label them. Which one is or should be human-led? Which one or should be AI-assisted? And then which of those should be automated? And then every week, move one of those decisions out to the right? So in that decision map audit, you're going to find a couple of things. You're going to find data that gives you more information. You're going to find places where you probably don't have enough information and need to go talk to someone or figure out how the process works or what blind spots you have there to close the gap between what the data is telling you and where you want to go. And then you're going to have some decisions to make. So a part of this is requiring that every AI output gets a human dialogue and a clear decision owner. Those are your guardrails. Those are the things that you can quickly put into place so somebody's not sending something that's AI generated out on behalf of your company or your brand that really is not what you wanted to have out there, right? And so guardrails, Maybe you publish a one-page policy that begins the process of getting people on the same page. Maybe it's acceptable uses, maybe it's privacy rules, and maybe it's escalation if somebody has a question. Really, really simple ways to get your arms around some of what to a lot of us feels big and unwieldy and uncertain. And we're probably, if you're ducking that your head in the sand about this and just hoping people figure it out, that's just a recipe for disaster. And I think we have enough of that shit going around to deal with that. So which repeated decision is draining human time that AI can draft in 60 seconds is actually a beautiful way to reflect on some of those 10 recurring decisions that you make and how to implement where AI can be effective or really just muddy the waters, right? So disruption 2, this is the one that I did the big workshop on. I'm actually being asked to do this quite a bit. I delivered the workshop, Multi-Generational Leadership Strategies at the Boca Chamber, I want to say a couple months ago. It was it's enormously well received. And out of that, I'm getting invitations to do smaller workshops with businesses in the community, because people from bakeries to nonprofits to an auto repair shop that has a couple of franchises to, just everybody, people I would not have normally thought would care about this. Understanding that managing generational and multi-generational differences with the lens of how do I maximize my ROI is a massive power move right now. It really is. And being flexible, not just, oh my God, I'm going to lower every barrier and just do whatever people want. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is you freaking get smarter about what your goals are, what the outcomes are, where the people that you hire sit, how they respond to whatever the stimulus is. And using that to your advantage is a massive, massive leadership hack right now. And so I'll give you an example. 2 managers, same company. And this was kind of one of the scenarios that we talked about in one of those workshops. One complained, Gen Z won't pick up the phone. Dude, I know, okay? Like getting my children to answer my call is like, the other day, my daughter answered the phone and I was just confused because I had prepared the voice note that I was going to leave. Another said, Zoom culture is killing our focus. And I think they weren't facing necessarily a generational gap, but maybe a clarifying gap, right? And these are things that we all have stereotypes about each other. We all have stereotypes about generations. We all have stereotypes, period. And part of using this framework I'm going to introduce to you is that you're going to realize what the problem is, and a lot of times it's not age. And so there's this 5-part framework that I've shared and I like to use. It's called awareness, adaptability, communication, connection, and collaboration. I'll say that again. Awareness, adaptability, communication, connection, and collaboration. And so using this really clear, simple framework can help you zero in on where the tender spots are and honestly use tools you already have in your leadership toolbox to implement some quick strategies around that. A leadership trap and a leadership reframe. So the trap is some of us write policies around stereotypes. And the reframe is you're leading humans and you have to personalize how you align and standardize what you expect. For a lot of us, our old subconscious limitations come into play here. And if you've not done, I call it elevated self-work, these really sneak up on you. A big one that came up generationally when I was leading the workshop was some generations believe that if I see that you are a hard worker and an effective worker, if you're at your desk for 12 hours a day. or you are the first one to come into the office and the last one to leave. And some generations believe I'm an effective worker if I work when I am energetically at my best. I know for me, energetically, I'm at my best in the mornings. I record my podcast in the mornings when I have energy. I take my big meetings. I do my decision type activities, my creative work in the morning when I am energetic. And then by the afternoon, I am like, it's mundane type stuff. And I know that when I left corporate, when I left the federal government, that was the biggest sigh of relief for me, was being able to flex and be my most effective and most efficient during my energy time outputs versus, when somebody decided like, I'm going to have a meeting at 4:30 that's going to run late, and then everybody's distracted and not doing their best, right? So 3 leader moves for this. Working preferences intake is a game changer. How do you prefer feedback? How do we reach you urgently? What motivates you? What does support look like? And I'll tack mine on, which is when I need you to do big, important, heavy tasks, like, are you a morning person or an afternoon person or a night owl? I know when I was younger, my best work came, my best ideas, when I was writing my best-selling novel, like it would be at 3 to 6 in the morning, 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. And that wasn't sustainable, but for the bursts of energy and creativity, that was my witching hour. And I freaking loved it. And even now when I have to do massive content, or if we are thinking about marketing and I need my creative source energy, I honestly set my alarm for 3 a.m. and I will work till 6 a.m. before my household gets up. I've got kids and a dog and all of that stuff. And then I probably go to bed at like 1 p.m. and grab a nap. And I'm not saying I'm not privileged in the sense of, I get to create my own schedule. That's how I designed my life. And for a lot of you, that's not the same. But I would also venture to say that you do know when you are at your best. And if you are a leader, part of your responsibility is to also know when other people are at their best and give them ways to sort of live up to their potential, which only serves your outcomes better, right? So another strategy for this is set expectations clearly. One of the things that came up in that workshop that I did was the leader shared a lot of information via a newsletter. And a lot of the folks there on the younger side of the spectrum found it really hard to open that newsletter and trudge through to figure out the facts. And you got to think generationally. When I think about my son and my nieces and nephews, they're used to quick bursts of information, 30 seconds to a minute reels, a quick video. They're not going to read through a lot of words. I like nuance. So I am more likely to read a newsletter and absorb what I need to know from that versus my son would glaze over and keel over, quite frankly, right? So maybe you figure out, could I do a little video highlight that's at the beginning of the newsletter where I said, hey, important things, go to section 2. Here's the big takeaway, blah, blah, blah. And so you get your urgent and compelling things out to the people that need it that way. But to the readers like me, oh my God, I'm going to scroll for minute number 8 to get to the point, right? So this sort of expectation and clarity around your expectations could look and sound like this is how we do work here. Response time, meeting hygiene, deep work hours. The expectation of a lot of people that as soon as I send an email, you're going to answer is so backwards right now, because study after study after study has shown that scientifically deep focus work needs to be done for a specific period of time, whether it's 20 minutes or 40 minutes. There are all these techniques that you kind of just turn off your alarms, do your focus work from maybe 9 to 11 a.m., and then respond to emails after. I think setting up those norms, or honestly just giving people the option to do it, really can be a game changer for you. And a reflection prompt for you, if you will, is thinking about how do you reverse mentor people. Maybe pair a seasoned leader with an emergent leader monthly for a skill swap. And I shared this with the group where a younger person showed me a couple of years ago how to put music to like my reels and stories. And I was like, oh, it changed my life. Or how to edit videos, right? Like it was so easy, but I wasn't doing it because it just wasn't in my toolbox. And so pairing people and having them shadow each other for little bursts of time really allows for maybe them to have innovative ways to support each other, but also be able to share that deep wellspring of experience that is so necessary for a really engaged, really productive, powerful workforce, right? Now, disruption 3 is the one I talked about where I paired executive burnout with mental health, right? This one's personal for me, obviously, right? I had a really sweet title, hit all the metrics, had all of the qualifications. Well, I still do. It's not like, oh my God, I left corporate and those expired. But I ignored all of the signals. And then one day my body literally just shut down. And I am lucky. I tell this story so much. I've shared it on stages. I share it here in my podcast where I'm one of those people that I really like to really dig deep with this and challenge people to say, how many of you know people that died and came back? And a lot of times the answer is maybe 1 or 2 or none, generally speaking. And I don't hold that up as a badge of honor. I do it as a sense of, 1, a reality check, but 2, I use myself as an example of something that you don't want to have happen to yourself. Right? And so part of my life's work now is really working energetically to share my story, but also more importantly, the strategies to not have that happen to you, right? But that was my reset, right? And so burnout isn't this badge, like I said, but it's a boundary that I ignored for so long in pursuing what I thought was success, in showing up in identities that I thought made me more palatable, in diluting my needs to serve everybody else, right? And that's part of the leading courageously, is really moving and backing away from that. So a trap that I see for a lot of people is thinking that burnout, 1, is something that happens to other people, but also thinking that it's a weakness that you have to push through on your own. Burnout is real and it's insidious and it isn't always obvious, right? It isn't like, oh my God, suddenly I'm going to get up and like, I understand that I have burnout. No, I understand that I'm not sleeping well. I understand that my hair is dropping out. I understand that I go for hours at a time without drinking water or hydrating myself. I understand that my health is and vitality is the last thing on the table. And I work with a lot of nonprofit leaders, you guys, and because their mission is so deep rooted, because a lot of times they are working with the most underserved in our communities, that self-sacrificial identity is huge. They will put themselves last because the mission is bigger than them. And, that catches up with them. And then, what are you going to do if you can't function? Then the mission stalls, right? So it's sort of this weird dynamic. The reframe here is, burnout is a signal. It's not a weakness. It's just an indicator. Protect the system and you protect the people. And I think having ways to do that, I know when I was the president of a employee resource group at FEMA, we had a couple hundred people across the country, and we started implementing things like chair yoga on lunchtime. And it was crazy how many people joined because we sit at our chair for hours at a time, but understanding how to get up and make tiny little, use that chair to stretch, to get our, limbs moving a little bit, to maybe shake out our lymphatic system. The change in people was so remarkable, right? And so part of this is, how do you look at the systems and the norms in your organization, your company, your home, and really try to protect the people, the humans, right? And so 3 leader moves. One, like I said, a part of it was rituals and rhythms, right? Like maybe it's weekly vision check-ins. Maybe it's chair yoga. I don't know. Maybe it's protecting those focused time blocks I talked about, where you understand that this division goes dark for email unless it's like hugely important, and you have to define what that means, for 2 hours on Tuesday morning, so that they can create content for the month or the week or whatever, right? And then doing that kind of daily energy audit. Another leader move, a power move, if you will, is a decision diet. When I first read about this a couple months ago, I had to snicker, right? What the heck is a decision diet? I'll tell you what it is. It's cutting non-strategic approvals for 1 week and empowering the team with guardrails. I know we talk about the Ritz-Carlton, and we've done all these Harvard Business Reviews on people that, Southwest Airlines is another example, all of these companies that excel in delivering mad value because they've empowered their teams. And a lot of it is giving people the autonomy to make some of these decisions that unburdens you and your leadership team for more strategic things. But also, my gosh, the ankle biting has to stop, right? So think about what a decision diet for you could be when you are thinking about executive burnout and protecting that mental wellness piece. And then being real truthful about some things. I remember that every time we had leaders come in, when I worked in the federal government, every freaking 3.5, 4 years, we had sometimes a change in administration. And the new administration inevitably would come in with their metrics and what they wanted to achieve and the mark they wanted to leave on the world. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that there were some practices that stayed in place month after month, year after year, leader after leader, and nobody ever questioned it. And I remember this one leader came in. He was a bit of a disruptor himself. And he said, you know what, we're just going to stop sending that report to headquarters for a month and see what happens. Who cries? Who screams? And we were like, oh, no. And he was like, yep, we're going to do it. And we were like, well, we've always done it. Like, what's going to happen? And he said, let's see who screams, who yells for it. And why he said that is to get this freaking report ready by Wednesday, close of business, took a lot of man hours, woman hours. It took a lot of effort to deliver this report that we'd always done for somebody that actually never questioned it, responded to it, reacted to it, addressed it. So yeah, that was a way to stop doing something and understand what the consequence, if any, was. And then in the end, it was something that we were able to stop doing, right? So think about some of the truths that you need to uncover in your organization. We've always done it this way is a perfect example of something like that, where you want to challenge not only your people that are doing it the same way and stuck in a little bit of a rut, but think about how you can even couple this with that strategy we talked about earlier, that disruption with AI and technology, in terms of when you think about the 10 decisions, what are some of these that actually could maybe be automated, or maybe AI can sort of supplement some of those things that are being done, right? And then a reflection prompt. Oh, this one was tough. If your calendar reflected your values, like, what would it say about you? I remember I had a business coach a couple of years ago, and He asked me for 1 week to document my day. And I was like, yo, what do you mean? Because a big alibi for a lot of people is I don't have enough time, there's not enough resources, blah, blah, blah. And that was one of my alibis is I just don't have time. I'm a mom, I've got young kids, I've got commute, I've got my business. Like I was like, who has time? When I did my calendar audit, oh my God, everything for self-care, everything for making Stacey vital and energetic and a pleasure to be around was last. In fact, it was freaking optional. It was the first thing that I dropped off to do something else that, So yeah, I was able to find, I don't know, like 6 hours a week of just dumb shit I was doing that I could drop off. But more importantly, it showed me where I had net time. And another powerful peak performance hack is net time is when you are doing something that you could actually double to do something else. So a perfect example of net time is if you are driving, instead of listening to music, you can listen to your favorite podcast or you can listen to a training module. Instead of, when you're walking, just walking again. And yeah, you can listen to music that's enjoyable. But maybe if family is important to you and I didn't have time to call my friends or whatever, maybe a portion of that time, net time, is spent doing an activity that takes something off your to-do list because it meets one of your core values of connecting. So these are just little ways that you can prevent burnout, but also work on coupling some of these strategies to improve and boost your mental health, your vitality, your acuity, your peak performance, right? And then disruption 4. And I know this one's going to be a sticky for a lot of people right now and tough shit. But I want to talk about inclusion and culture in kind of what we are seeing, which is a bit of a polarized world, right? So I've worked with a lot of leaders recently that are really terrified of making, quote unquote, the wrong move when it comes to inclusion. And a raw truth is having clarity around the culture in your organization should not be political. It should absolutely be around brand integrity. Like, who are you in the world? What does your brand say about what you're delivering? Who are the people that you are speaking to? You're signaling that this is what I'm doing is for you. I built it for you. I created it for you. Invest in me and I will invest in you. And if your values only show up when it's easy, there really aren't values. They're just marketing, right? They're just cosplaying. And so a trap that I'm seeing is we either have silence or performative statements, and there's no follow through. And a reframe is, instead of thinking of it as inclusion or some other word that's causing you to pause, think of it as the same way you would invest in making the best possible product. Your culture is your product. You could have the best thing sitting on the shelf. You could have the best coaching program, whatever. And if your culture, who you are in the world, the way that your actions don't match your words, then it's just performative. And people don't trust performative. People want to do business with other people that they know, like, and trust. And so when you think about culture as a product, as a supporting role in your success, then do some small pilots, right? Do things that you can test, like create feedback loops. Think about forums to encourage conversations around what's necessary for your clients. Keep it client focused, right? If you want to be responsive to the market, you have to listen. You have to listen and you have to adapt. So 3 leader moves I see around this concept of being responsive and not being paralyzed are: define the standards for your organization, and quite honestly, define the standards for yourself. That's part of owning your power, owning your personal role in the world, right? And even if it's 5 sentences on how you want people to feel in meetings, or how you want to hire, or how you want to provide feedback, matters. And, diversity comes in all shapes and forms. When you think about accessibility, I know my brother, he has Down syndrome, and he did a stint at Walmart once, and I read their policies and, the way that they gave feedback, the way that they trained them. So it's the gamut, right? It's not just this hyper black and white view that some people have. And I think it's important that in the work that you are doing, you are cognizant that the way that you show up influences the culture of your organization, influences performance, influences output, influences return on investment. That's it. That's the recipe. So define your standards and then work within those parameters. Another way is to think about the moments that matter and really dig into what does that journey look like, whether it's recruiting or performance evaluations or performance. Like, what are things that you can do around these human experiences in your company that make a difference? And then, Simon Sinek wrote this book, Great Leaders Always Eat Last. I could actually be screwing up the name of that book, but Google it and I'm sure you will find it. But there's this concept too that leaders go first. In the Pentagon, when I worked for IBM, we had a contract with DoD, and so I was in the Pentagon for a few years. One of our leaders, a senior executive, he always used to say, we have to eat our own dog food. And oh my God, at the time I was like, what does that even mean? But now I say it quite often is I can't sit and talk about things. I have to actually do it myself. And I think what I've found in the decades that I've been doing this work is great, phenomenal leaders go first. They go first. They don't just send the weakest links out first or the most vulnerable of us and expect them to carry the water, right? So whether senior leaders, a couple of ways you can do this is maybe you do those meetings where you allow other people to shadow you. Maybe you think about culturally what some of those key customer employee engagement experiences are, and you test those with your leadership team before, cascading it out into the organization. And then a way to do this is as you're doing your strategic planning sessions, as you're preparing. I know as soon as we're coming up on the last quarter of the year and people are probably panicking if they're not where they thought they would be, what are some of the feedback mechanisms that you can start taking the good with the bad news and understanding what your next moves are? And so, I think that reframing a lot of this is a way to dig deeper into what it is you're really trying to accomplish and not just doing it in a performative fashion because maybe you're just scared. You just even saying that sucks, right? So we covered a lot today. We talked about this concept of disruptions always happening. We talked about 4 specific disruptions that we're seeing kind of universally, globally. They are AI acceleration and technology shifts. It's the multi-generational workforce and what are some strategies for that. It's this concept of executive burnout coupled with mental wellness and some strategies for that. And what can inclusive leadership look like as a strategy around strengthening your culture, strengthening your brand, and what the ROI for that can look like. And so 4 disruptions, but also 4 chances where you can really do some power resetting, set up small implementable strategies with your teams, and build some more clarity and resilience into what it is you're trying to accomplish. So here's your challenge. I like to give you a little bit of a poke in the, gut a little bit. Choose one of these actions I gave you and implement it this week. It's Wednesday, my time. I think this is going to drop in a couple of weeks. So my episodes drop every Wednesday, wherever you listen to podcasts. And hopefully if you're catching this on a Wednesday, set a reminder so that you get notifications and you can use your net time to listen to it, and pick a strategy and run water through the pipes with it. Because I assure you, disruptions aren't going to wait till you're ready. It's just going to happen and you're going to be caught unawares with no plan and trying to play catch up, right? So if this conversation helped you in any way, shape, or form, please share it with others who are dealing with a lot right now, but who you also think would find this valuable and beneficial. Subscribe, and give me a rating on this podcast. And if you want more of this type of information, please subscribe to my newsletter. It's called The Leadership Pulse on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn at Stacey, S-T-A-C-E-Y, Luces, L-U-C-E-S, and also Instagram, Stacey.Luces. And I really love to hear from you. I would love to hear if you've implemented one of these, what your result has been, even if you want to say, girl, it's great that you said that, but here's what really happened. I'm not perfect, and none of these strategies are going to be perfect. They are just leadership strategies to strengthen the toolkit that you should already have, that you should be picking from depending on the need, the urgency, and the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. So remember this, the most powerful leaders are not the busiest. They are the ones with the most clarity. And so hopefully this gave you some more clarity, and I will see you next time on Beyond the Quo. Thanks so much.